going to be our Report Builder series, and this is actually the very first session of this series, and it's going to last all month. And we do appreciate your attendance today. I am going to go ahead and place everybody on mute just to eliminate the background noise and any interruptions. But to facilitate answering questions that you have during the broadcast, we can use the Q&A feature. So if you'll notice up at the top of your screen, there's a toolbar. And if you hover over the series of icons, you'll click the one with the question mark on it, and then in the drop-down you'll select to host and presenter, and then type your question in the dialog box. And you can send questions at any time. Throughout the presentation, I will stop periodically to answer questions that have come in. But this session also is going to be recorded and placed on our website for future reference. So, for the first class, we'll go ahead and discuss some of the terms that are used in Report Builder. The IBM query program is really the engine that's used by Report Builder to perform inquiries on any data that's stored in a database. And query is a very powerful tool that lets you display, and print data in a variety of ways. CUBase also has many canned query reports that can be viewed on your screen. Many of the reports are located on the Report Builder menu, but some of them are also located on other menus, such as the Head Teller menu and that sort of thing. But first we'll talk about some of the different terms that you're going to encounter in Report Builder. The first one we talk about is a file, and a file, you can think of it as a type of storage container for data, similar to maybe a manila file folder that contains paper files. And groups of many different files are then stored within a library. One file, for example, holds member name and address information, while another stores loan information. And then the library, and we've referred to it as a location, is a storage location for those previously mentioned files, similar to like a file cabinet that you have at your desk. And a library can also store custom reports that you create and save. And then there's also a record, and a record is a complete group of data within a file. So for example, you've got the master file, which contains membership information, and all of the information about a specific membership account comprises a record. And within those records, they contain many fields, such as the name, address, date of birth, and a field, like we just said, is an individual piece of data within a record. Okay? And there's one field for each individual piece of data. There's two Report Builder menus, but the very first Report Builder menu, you can access it by typing MN Query into the shortcut box on the bottom left-hand side of your ING Gold screen, or from your list of menu options, you can click Report Builder number 1 to get there. Either one of those are going to take you to the correct menu. The Report Builder menu contains member and account file inquiries, plus a number of miscellaneous file inquiries. The next 3 slides are going to contain description of all these miscellaneous inquiries. We'll talk about them. We're not going to go into each one today, but we will touch on a few of them. But before we do that, there's also a second, or after we talk about these, we'll look at our second Report Builder menu. So for the first Report Builder menu, under all of the miscellaneous files, we have a ACH Fed transmission summary query. And in there, you can view ACH settlement totals for a series of dates, and the data is retained in there for the past 60 days so that it can be displayed across the end of a month. Then we have auto response statistics Statistics, and that is going to let you view all member activity for members using audio response. And the query does produce a detailed listing showing each individual member call. And then again, the same thing for online banking. We have online banking stats, and you can view all member activity used for the members using online banking, and the query produces a detailed listing showing each individual member session. And there's also a query for your audio response and online banking loan application requests. So you could view a list of all the members who have requested a loan application be sent to them, or maybe they requested that a loan office or some other department give them a call, and they are doing that using the options available in audio response. You probably should use this feature on a regular basis to follow up on the member requests. Those requests are actually on a menu item too. And then we have a collateral VIN number lookup, and this is one that we're going to be taking a look at a little later. You can view loan collateral records associated with member loan accounts, and the query does produce a detailed list showing each individual collateral record, and it includes the description of the collateral, the estimated value information, and it can be especially helpful for cross-referencing of VIN with a loan account, within a loan account. Maybe you've got a title and you see the vehicle identification number in there, but you're not even sure which account it belongs to. You could look it up by that VIN number. We do have a menu option for cross-selling to view the status of the tasks on your credit union's cross-sales task list, and it will include all members for whom task information has been recorded. And then we have an IRA balance file comparison, and again, this is a menu option on one of your reports menus, but you can also get to it through query. So you can view a comparison between the balance that's shown in the member's IRA balance file, and it compares that to the net total of all deposit and withdrawal transactions performed for the IRA type. And it doesn't display everything, it only displays the accounts where the totals do not match. We also have a member survey query where if you do put a survey out there in your online banking and members respond to it, you can view all of their recorded responses. And we have an email address lookup. You can locate a member's email address. It was designed for situations where an email is sent to the member but it's returned as undeliverable. So you enter that email address from the returned email, and the system is going to show you which member account the address belongs to. You can also use it to show all members who have email addresses or who don't have email addresses. And then there's another one for email address lookup. It's pretty much the same thing. And then we have a plastic inquiry. There you can view a list and a count of all records that are in the plastic file for ATM cards and debit cards. And it's useful for determining the exact number of cards currently held by the members. If the member does have 3 ATM cards for the same account, all 3 records will be listed and counted. So it's counting the actual number of cards. And we have an employee ID, or employee activity query. You can actually monitor access to the CU-based programs by any employee ID, whether it's a credit union employee or from the data center. And it is used to let you see what commands an employee accessed, not actually what they did while they were in there. So it should be used in conjunction with the LEBOG report or the file maintenance report. So we're taking a quick look now at our second report builder menu, and you can get to that by typing MNQRY2, or you can choose CU-based report builder 2 from the menu. And it does contain additional CAN queries, and we're going to touch on a few of these too as we're going through the process today. But first, we're going to go back to our first Report Builder menu. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at option number 2, which is Search for Files and Fields. When you first enter that screen, you're going to see a list of all of the files that are available. And this list is also going to include the end of month name for those files. So if you do know part of the description on the file, you can type that into the file description name or a partial description, and it's going to bring up all the files containing that word that you typed in. But once you determine which file it is you want to look at, you're just going to highlight that one, and then you're going to choose View Fields. It's then going to display every single field that is available in that previous file that you had chosen. Okay. And one of the other options on this View Fields and Files menu item is to view commonly used files. And that's by this icon up on the upper right-hand side of the screen. What that does then is just list the most commonly used files in the database, and it's a little bit hidden in here, but it's also going to display the end of month file name for you. This next slide is going to list the different comparison options that you'll have when you're using a canned or a custom query. And as we're going through the list and some of the canned queries, you're going to see more where this comes into play. But we're just going to go over it real quick right now so that you'll have an idea of what the comparison values are, and also then you'll know where this is on this PowerPoint in case you need to reference back to it as you're playing with query. So when you're comparing two different things within your query, you can tell the system how the value should match the transaction record. You can say that it's going to be, should be equal to, it should be not equal to, it can be less than or equal to, it can be greater than or equal to, it can be less than, greater than, it could be a range between one value and another, or it could match something in a list that you type in, or it does not match something in a list that you type in, or it could be like, meaning it starts with or ends with or matches the pattern of whatever it is you type in, or it could be not like, that it does not start with or end with or match the pattern of. And the next screen actually contains the guidelines for entering selection criteria. And of course, we're going to talk about this more as we're creating the queries. But this information is also here in the PowerPoint so that you can come back to it. And the most common thing that you'll have to remember is that when you're entering your selection criteria, any fields containing alphanumeric text must be entered with single quotes surrounding the value. For example, if you're searching for teller ID 89, the value must be entered as single quote 89, single quote in the value field. But to find out whether or not a field requires the quotes, there's a column labeled DEC next to each field, and if there's any number in there, even a 0, then no quotes are needed. If there's nothing in there, then it is needed, and we'll point that out a little bit later too. But that's one of the most common things that gets a little bit confusing when you're entering your selection criteria, is remembering when to put in those quotes. The next slide actually talks about the use of and or options when you're creating your queries. This again will make more sense when we're looking at our queries, but the information is here on this slide for you to go back to. So if you do choose and, to add an additional condition, that means that the record must match both conditions that you put in. Or if you use or, that means that the condition only has to match one of the two. And again, we'll get to that more as we're looking at our queries. So we're going to start by taking a look at the member account and file queries, and then we'll move on to some of the miscellaneous ones. We'll take a look first here at our master file. The master file, like we talked about, contains personal information that's held in the member record, such as the name, the address, the social, date of birth, the date the account was opened, the phone number, and that sort of thing. So when you very first enter a canned query, you can see up here the system is asking us to enter some selection criteria. But if you just want to see everybody in that particular file, all you have to do is press enter, and it's going to give you the list of everybody that's in that file. And it's going to contain all of the different fields that are in that file, or most of the different fields that are in that file. If you wanted to get to the bottom of the report, so maybe you could just see your count, you can use a B in that position to line, and that pops you down to the bottom of the report. Some of the reports are actually going to display totals. It will say total and give you a count, where some of them are just going to give line numbers. So in this case, this master file that we queried, we can see that there's 29,529 records or accounts in the Bedrock database. Okay, so, but we'll go back into the master file, and let's say that we want to see how many organizational accounts that we have. We would first go down to the bottom of the screen and find the field that contains that information. And in this case, it's MASTYP. And you can double click it from here, or you could highlight it and click select, or you could just type it into this field name box. Either one of the three ways, we need to have the field name in this first record up here. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and choose our comparison. In this case, we want to say that our member type equals, and then we need to put in our criteria. And we will say that our member criteria, or the criteria, the member type must equal MO. And in this decimal column down here, we can see that there's no number or anything there. So that gives us the clue that, yep, we need to go ahead and have these single quotes around our criteria. Okay. So after you enter your criteria and press enter, then you're going to get your report. And in this case, this report is giving us only the members who have an organizational account. And if you press B, you can go again to the bottom of the file, and in this case we've got 1,392 organizational accounts. If for some reason you wanted to get back to the top of the screen, you just put a T there and press enter, and it brings you back to the top of the report. So unlike the custom reports, canned queries cannot actually be printed. You can do screen prints from here, but you can't tell this specific report to print. There is a copy option where you can copy a canned query over to a custom query, and then at that point you can specify your print option, so you would be able to print it. The instructions for copying a canned query to a custom query can be found in Show Me the Steps. We'll pop back to the main menu here, and we'll take a look at some of the other files that you can query. You can query the Member 1 file, which is share and IRA accounts, or the Member 2 file, which is all checking and draft accounts, the Member 3 file, which is certificate accounts, the Member 5 file, which is regular loan accounts, and that also does include any of your student loans. And then we also have our Member 6 file, which are any of your line of credit accounts. So when you actually query any of these files here, 1, 2, 3, 5, or 6, they contain information only about those share accounts. They don't contain any of the master membership information. So if you were to query the share file, you wouldn't be able to get any of your member names on that record, on the report. So in that case, what you do is you tie two files together, like the master and the Member 1. And we're going to be going over tying files together in our second class, so we're going to be going over custom queries, and then in the next class we'll be going over tying classes or files together. So you will pick up on that during this month. We're not going to be doing it today, but it is coming. So first, let's go ahead and take a look at our Member 1 file. And remember, this is shares and IRA accounts. So we're going to say that we want to see all accounts where the IRA flag is equal to I, meaning it is an IRA account. So you enter your selection criteria, and you press enter, and you then have your report. Okay? And again, at any point, you can go to the bottom if you wanted to see a count. We're going to go back to this master file, though, and we're going to do another report. We're going to say that we want to see anybody whose zip code equals the 495120000. So we enter the zip code field name equal to, and then we type in that zip code. And you press enter, and you'll have your report of anybody who has an address that includes that zip code. You actually may need to use your arrow keys down here, your move left and your move right options, to scroll over to see any information on the far right-hand side of your screen, because they do contain all of the records, all of the fields. But now let's say that we still want to see people in that zip code, but we only want to see people whose first name is June. So because of the fact that we want the record to have both of those, we're going to say and. So we want the zip code to equal whatever zip code, and the first name equals June. Press enter, and you have your report. And you can see that from that original report that had many items, this one is now whittled down to just 2 items, because there's 2 members whose first name is June. So then let's go ahead and hop over, and we're going to take a look at this collateral or VIN number lookup query. And like we talked about before, maybe you've got a title, but you don't even know which member it belongs to. When you go into this query option, this particular one, the system is going to ask you if you want to see active loans or if you want to see closed loans. So you actually may have to run this twice if the information you're looking for does not show up on your first query. Then you'd probably want to try the closed loans or the active, depending on which you chose first. So we will say that the title that we have in our hands, or the collateral ID, contains the pattern of, because we don't want to have to type in the whole thing. So we are going to use our percent signs, and that basically means some piece of this needs to match. So it contains the pattern of ABC 1, 2, 3. Maybe that's all, maybe the title's damaged and that's all you can read on it. So you only have to put in a small amount in order for it to search through and look for that. So after doing that, and then you press enter, the system then will come back and tell you every time it found where that particular field contained that pattern. And you would be able to tell from that point who that particular title belonged to. The next one that we'll take a quick look at is our number 22, our member survey. So when you go into the member survey, if you don't enter any selection criteria and you just press enter, you're going to get a report of everybody who responded to the survey. Or, again, you can use your selection criteria to break it down and look for a specific answer to a specific question. So number 24 are members with email addresses. We're going to say we want to find people who do not have an email address. We're going to say that we want to see everybody whose email address, or we want to see people who do have one. We will look for everyone whose email address does not equal blank. In this case, we can see that the email address line number 1 has nothing in this decimal column, so we know that we need the quotes. But we're looking for basically a blank field, or it is not a blank field. So we do a single quote and blank and a single quote. So basically it's just the 2 single quotes. And that means blank. There's nothing in that field. And the email address field is actually the only field that gold does not turn around and capitalize depending on what you type in. It stays as you type it. So then you just press enter and you get a list of all of the members that have an email address. The plastics file that we talked about earlier, number 25. We'll just say that we want to see how many debit cards we do have on file, or credit cards, or ATM cards, I'm sorry. So we're going to leave the fields, the selection criteria fields, blank because we want to see everything. And once we get in there, we will go ahead and position to the bottom of our report, and it's going to give us counts for our plastics. If you wanted to, if you had a certain card number and you needed to see which account number it was tied to, you could enter that card number in your selection criteria. Card number equals, and then whatever the card number is, and it's going to give you the account it's tied to. Or the other way around, you could enter the account number, and then you'd be able to see which card is tied to that particular account. We'll take a quick look now at our Reports To menu, and we're going to first take a look at our GL history. So that's going to contain all of your GL history, but in this case, we're going to say that we want to see any GL debit for $400 or any GL credit for $400. Now, we're not at this point specifying a GL account or a date range or anything. We just want to see any GL debit or any GL credit. And that's going to list every single one that the system finds out there in the GL history. Okay? And again, we could have used additional selection criteria for the date to narrow it down, for example. But we'll take a second here to discuss our and our or options, let's just say that the $400 that we're looking for was in a specific GL number, and we know that GL number, but we didn't know if it was a debit or a credit. We would go ahead and enter it on our screen and say we would want to see any GL debit that's equal to 400 and it was in GL account 739, or we want to see any GL credit for 400 and that was also equal to GL account number 739. So the system first gathers all the debits of 400 for GL account 739, and then it gathers all the credits for that same account, and then it will display them for you. One of the common mistakes when you're running an and or situation is to leave out this final and, thinking that you already specified that up here. But that line item, of course, only pertains to your first line item of selection criteria. So you do have to include that for each one of your line items. So that's an example of when you may use the and or options. We're going to take a quick look at now at our collection inquiry screen. We're going to say that we're looking for a collection classification of D for delinquent. We don't want overline or we don't want written off. We just want to see delinquent loans. So if you just specify that and press enter, you're going to get a list of all of the loans that are classified as delinquent today. And keep in mind that you could have specified additional selection criteria to narrow it down even more. And this is basically the same information that's going to be on your collection menu. Option number 1, work with collections, when you specify you want to work with delinquent accounts. So a couple different ways of getting to it. A couple of the other options that we have on our collection number 2 menu is our cash inventory analysis, our cash analysis tools. And they actually can also be found on the teller and the cash analysis tools menu. But there are 2 options here, the first one being a cash inventory summary, which includes coin and a total for bills, and then the second option breaks down the bills by denomination. But for either one of those reports, you can go ahead and specify the date that you're looking for, and a lot of times that would normally be today's date, so you would have assistance in ordering cash from the bank. And then you press enter and the system is going to give you your report. And just keep in mind that you may need to scroll right to get any of your grand totals there. Okay, so we'll take a look at the last report on the Report Builder 2 menu that we want to take a look at is our options for Reg E. Okay. So we're going to say that we want to look for all members who are opted out. So we're going to say that the opt-in or opt-out field, which we found down below, is equal to O for out. And then when you press enter, you're going to get the list of all of your members who are opted out. Okay. We're gonna go ahead and take a look at a couple more of our Report Builder options, but we're going to look at it in Bedrock. So we're going to go to our Report Builder number 1 menu. Some of the other options that we have, we've got an option to look at shares and share draft transaction history. and we have the option to look at loan or line of credit transaction history, and then the option to look at CD transaction history. And the way that those work, if you're looking for a specific piece of history, you can say that we'll say that our TRAN amount is equal to $20, and our account base is equal to, okay, and I actually don't have any matches for that, but once you enter your selection criteria, just like any of the other canned queries, you press enter and the report's going to display on your screen. And just as a reminder, any of these canned queries that you aren't able to print from here, you can copy them into a custom query, at which point then you can go in and modify that custom query for your selection criteria and for where you want it to print. So you do have that option on any of these canned queries, even though you can't print from this screen. So is there anything else that anybody'd like to take a look at right now, or any questions that you may have? The canned queries are really rather simple. Our next 3 classes that we cover with the custom queries and with tying files together are gonna last longer because there's a lot more information to cover. But does anybody have any questions right now on the canned queries?
I ended up writing a bunch of this.
And I do have the mute turned off, so if you do have a question, you can just ask. So what I would actually like to do this week is have each of you practice building a simple query, and you want to go ahead and find out how many wrong addresses that you have in your credit union. If you have any questions while you're building that query, or questions about any of the fields or anything that you're trying to access, you can go ahead and pop me an email, and I'll be happy to work with you on your query. The other thing that I would like each of you to do is, for our next couple classes, we're going to go ahead and use query requests from the different credit unions. So if you'd like to go ahead and submit parameters for 2 queries that you would like to see on the screen, then we can possibly use those queries in our next couple classes. And if you would all just shoot me an email with those query requests, my email address is on the screen, plus it's going to be on the PowerPoint on our website. So if you could do that, I would really appreciate it. It gives us something to go on for the next couple weeks.
I'm listening to this little video, webinar, but it's great to see.
Okay, so any questions?
She was just giving us our homework. Homework for
Yeah, so if not, I sure appreciate everybody's attendance, and I look forward to talking with you next week. Your meeting invitation will be sent out to you on Tuesday sometime for Wednesday morning.
Thank you so much, Penny.
All righty. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, Penny.
You're welcome.